In some cases it will help, in some cases it won't.
It depends on the context in which you're doing it.
It depends on the context in which you're doing it. It depends on why you're doing it. It depends on, a whole lot of things. It depends on what you see, what you understand, how much knowledge you have. Because if you have, let me just say this, when you achieve a certain level of knowledge, it's like an entire phase transition in a system. You become a different being. And that's the truth.
Mm-hmm. And you have to...
The problem is when you say something like that, the first thing that comes to a New Ager's mind is, I'm going to be floating on light with wings.
Or I'm going to be able to see auras.
That's not what is meant by that. It's so easy to take that out of control. I mean, the thing is like, when you're a child, right, you have an understanding of the world. It's very, very restricted and small in a certain sense. And people, children are all wonderful, but children are very ignorant. Children are not innocent, they're ignorant. And we think that their ignorance is cute and we call it innocent. But at a certain point, you come of age, and there's a point in your life where you stop being a child and start being an adult, and you see the world completely different. At that point, you have become a completely different person. You no longer see the world the way it was. You have changed. You have become able to do things that you weren't able to do before, and to work in ways that you weren't able to work before, and think and feel and control your emotions in ways that you weren't able to do before. And so it's not unreasonable to say that there is also other points that you can reach. I mean, say, for instance, a person who goes through an entire course of physics goes through a kind of phase transition where suddenly they have a different understanding of the world, correct or incorrect, doesn't matter. They see the world differently than a bricklayer. And so that's kind of like what we're saying. I just wanted to qualify that.
Okay.
Before people start thinking that we're going to, grow wings or something, it's like, no.
We may have another call here. Hang on.
Hello, Joe. Hello, Laura. This is Mary from Arizona.
Hi, Mary. Long time.
It has been a long time. And I miss you guys, and I'm so grateful you're doing this. But I wanted to just chime in. Speaking about adding knowledge, I have been doing that so much. And one of the biggest sacred cows there is this Constitution. I have learned that it is a private contract, and it was never meant for the people, and that's why the people and the posterity were capitalized.
That's why they demanded the Bill of Rights, because they wouldn't accept the Constitution. They knew what it was, that it gave them no rights.
If you ever read the Constitution, in the gun show I want to do it because I've highlighted portions, the Constitution is not a document for the people. It doesn't even mention the people pretty much at all. It doesn't mention anyone's rights. It's all about what the government can do. In fact, there's actually one part of the Constitution, I don't have it word for word, where it basically says that after the point that you've ratified the Constitution, we can essentially change the law in any way we want, and that will become the law of the land regardless of what you say. It actually says that in the Constitution. It says, once you've signed this document, we can change anything, and that is the new law.
Yes, so, that's Article 6, Section 6. And
or
it says
something like
the supreme law of the land will be the Constitution and any treaties made thereof. And it goes back to the Law of Nations, and it references that. And along with the Constitution and understanding what's happening in the world today is understanding the elements of ecclesiastical law. In that, the Pope is guaranteed to be the enforcer of the laws, and that he has the right to punish or dismantle any government that he seems so fit. And that, Laura, has helped me understand so much of why the U.S. then became the enforcer for the United Nations. And everything they're doing is according to their codes and their laws.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's
the
never
only
been
way
a
out of
government
this.
Go ahead.
There is a way out of this.
There's no way out. Is that what you're saying?
I say there is, and it's through the treaties that were signed under the international law of self-determination. And it's like this, and it says this for silent weapons and quiet wars, that in order to get out from this, because everybody wants to recreate the womb of daddy government and mama religion, that the only way out is to form your own. It's like telling your parents, hey, I don't like your rules anymore. but there is a codified way in which to do this, and it's right there in the Law of Nations.
Yeah, but the problem is, I totally agree. I mean, that's like that is an actual solution to the problem, right? But here's the thing. Yeah. Here's the thing. Like in the American Civil War, right? You had a bunch of people who basically seceded, right? They basically said, you know what, screw you, we're going to do our own thing, and we'll become our own type of thing, right? And or like you have Palestine that did the kind of like the same self-determination thing. And what did they do? They spent 60 years basically bombing them randomly, and they still haven't actually really become a state. They've only kind of tentatively become one, you know? So it is possible, obviously, but you need so many people to come together and agree to do it, right?
And then you run the risk of all of those people being blasted back to the Stone Age by the ones with the bigger guns.
Right. So that's what happened in the Civil War, right? The South seceded. I mean, everyone says that it's about slavery. It wasn't exactly about slavery. It was about whether or not you could nullify laws from the Union. But and they basically killed them. And then so that they lost. I mean, the American Civil War is only called a Civil War because the South lost. If it had won, it would have been called a revolution, right? It would have been called something different. The victors decided to say, no, it's a civil war. We handled that problem. So, I mean, I totally agree, right? But then at the same time, what you have in America is you have this divide and conquer propaganda going on that is separating everybody because, to be quite honest, what you're saying probably would have already happened if that hadn't been this constant effort to get people to not trust each other, to, I'm a Mac user, I'm a PC user. I mean, in every part of your life, you're separated from other people. And if people could come together, they could do self-determination. That totally could absolutely work. Except you have to get people to realize that there is this propaganda campaign of this divide and conquer to keep people from doing that. Because if you think about it, I was making a point. I was talking to Anna and Shu, they're doing a lot of research on this whole the poverty thing. And there's a huge number of people in America in practically abject poverty. I mean, millions. There's more people in abject poverty than died in World War II, right? I mean, in close to really bad situations, no health care, no anything, most of them living out on the street. And if all of those people were to gather together in just one physical location, it wouldn't matter where, they would be the most terrifying group of individuals. I mean, 50 million people, there's 50 million impoverished people in the United States.
Yeah.
50 million people in one geographic location, and all they have to do is take a step to the right, and it would be like thunder. I mean, if they were to walk down a highway towards Washington, America doesn't have enough of an army, and they don't have enough bullets in their guns to take on 50 million people. So yeah, totally, what you're saying could happen, except it never will. Because, there's plenty of people, and there's plenty of people who could and should do that.
But they're divided.
Conquered. Against themselves.
They're divided and conquered.
What do you think of that, Mary?
Well, I see where he's going, but it has to start somewhere, and it has to start in an organic fashion. So if small groups are coming out together and those groups are cohesive, then there would be a counterbalance, and it would be signaling to the universe in a candid and direct manner.
So, okay, take for instance, here's a great metaphor for that whole situation, right? If you get sick, the doctor will prescribe you antibiotics, right? And these antibiotics are kind of hardcore stuff, and you have to take them for a certain amount of time. And if you don't, it can actually make the disease worse, right? Because a little bit of the antibiotic will weaken your body and your immune system, and unless you keep taking it so that it can kill off all of the bad, viral cells as well, then they will reinfect, and your immune system is so weak that it will take it over, right? So then you have this sort of problem. Is if you do what has been done, which is these small groups of people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, this Occupy Wall Street movement, what they did is they all got together and they say, hey, yeah, we're 10,000. 10,000 people isn't enough. If you can't bring more than were brought for the Million Man March back in the 60s, then you're just wasting your time, and you're actually making it worse, because now what you have is you have a police that have had lots of training exercises and real-life exercises on how to suppress and control small groupings of people, right? So all you're basically going to do is get herded into one area and arrested. I mean, they were arresting 800 people at a time. I mean, seriously, if you don't come out and represent a serious number of people, you're going to make, just like taking a small dose of antibiotics, you're going to actually make the situation worse. You're going to make it easier for them to corral you all together. You have to basically be an unmanageable mass. And I always say, if it took 1 million people in the 60s, right? You have to add 1 million for each year between now and then. So if you want to get anything done, guess what? You're going to have like,
50 million.
50 million people doing something to get heard, because otherwise they're not going to listen to you. You're basically going to be, cordoned off into one specific area, and the single moment that they think that you're gathering momentum, like the Occupy movement, they're going to go in and arrest as many of you as possible, shoot in the tear gas, whatever it is, and disperse you and say like, oh, well, you were violating some law. And then what are they going to do? Exactly what they did do. Now they've declared protests and gatherings, which are supposed to be a constitutional right, as low-level terrorism.
Well,
that's what came from the Occupy Wall Street.
I would have to disagree, because you would be in a different legal category and they wouldn't be able to arrest you. You would basically be having legal immunities, and there are codes, and I have seen it with other people. And this goes way beyond the patriot type of crap BS that's being.
What are you talking about specifically? I want to know. I want to hear. What are you? You have seen something. What have you seen, and what have they done?
I've seen people pulled over by the police who have shown their passports with the diplomatic passport from this other country that was developed. I mean, that went through the proper legal channels, and I have seen the policemen not go back to the car and check. I have seen the policemen do 180 degrees, apologize to the person for even pulling them over, and let them go on their way.
Okay,
what country is this?
That can work, but I mean, sure, that works for if a person does that. But the problem here is getting a large number of people to do that. How do you spread the?
Why don't you write an article about it?
Yeah, I mean, I like
We'll
this
publish
idea.
it.
I like this idea. I mean, what countries have been created recently by this method?
Well, they're called micronations, and there's been quite a few of them to come out.
Really?
This is an idea.
Yeah.
I want to start my own. I like write an article for this, because this is super awesome. I mean, if that works, then I'm 100% signed up. The United States of Jason. I call it the United States.
Yes, and there is one key that fits the door, like in the Matrix series. The key maker had one key before the system changed. And this is the key that was left in the codes for the international right of self-determination, which used to be called the right of self-exile.